Artificial intelligence is remaking marketing as we speak, and if you're a marketer, you can either get up to speed or get left behind. The choice is yours, and really, it's a no-brainer. Join Geoff Livingston and Greg Verdino as they explore the latest AI news, trends, tools, and ideas that are creating the future of marketing today. This is No Brainer, an AI podcast for marketers. Oh, and just in case you're wondering, yes, I am an AI. Take it away, Geoff and Greg.
Howdy, this is Greg Verdino, and thank you for tuning in to No Brainer. I am here as always with Geoff Livingston. Good morning, my friend.
How are you, sir?
I am doing well. We're recording this on May 1st. It's going to be May.
May the 4th be with you?
Almost. But it's starting to feel like spring, at least here in New York.
Yeah, it's actually, because, DC, I'm on the Virginia side of that. It's actually unseasonably summery warm, which is making me a little bit frightened for summer, my friend.
For the actual summer, yeah. So we have another friend with us today, somebody we've known for a long time, another New Yorker, 2-1 today, Geoff.
DC loses.
Absolutely, as always. David, with us today, we're joined by David Berkowitz. No, not that David Berkowitz, but David Berkowitz, the marketing megamind. I've known David, I'm sure you have too, Geoff, for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
He's lived through the digital wars, the social media age.
Survived South by Southwest even.
Absolutely, has somehow managed to keep most of his hair, unlike the rest of us. And for those of you who don't know David, he's a longtime agency veteran. He's been a CMO. He works today as a fractional CMO. He is also the organizer, the creator of Serial Marketers, an awesome community for marketing professionals, and more recently, an even awesomer community for marketing AI professionals, AI Marketers Guild. Thank you for joining us, David. Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. Well, great to reconnect with both of you.
It's good to see you, David, and thanks for starting the AI Marketers Guild. I've found it to be pretty useful.
Well,
Awesome.
I appreciate that, and great to have you both involved.
That's cool.
Yep, it's awesome. We're going to dive in shortly. Geoff, do you want to take everybody through the loves, the likes, and all the good stuff before we start asking David all the tough questions about artificial intelligence?
Sure thing. First of all, thank you all for listening, especially those of you coming from the Marketing Podcast Network. Please give this podcast a like wherever you may listen, iTunes, if you watch it on YouTube, if you're actually the one listener on Spotify, that's a joke, just kidding, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite
the actual
podcasts.
Listeners on Spotify is 0.
We don't know that. I don't know. I assume you're right, though. You're the better analytics pro here. But, if we could give us a review, we greatly appreciate it. We want to thank our show sponsors as well. I believe this month it's been linked in through the Marketing Podcast Network. And again, if you have any feedback for us, please do deliver it to us, whether it's via email, direct message. You can visit us on nobrainerpodcast.com. However you want to get it to us, we do take that feedback, and occasionally we do have a mailbag episode. And so with that, Mr. Greg, I give it back to you.
All righty. So we've got a lot to talk about, David. So I know that you recently did a study that you released. I believe you polled the AI Marketers Guild. It's like a tongue twister. AIMG group about sort of to kind of get a pulse on the current state of AI in marketing. And it was a great report. I'd love for folks who haven't seen it, and we will share this link in the show notes, of course. Why don't you talk a little bit about some of the key things that you found, especially the things that you found to be noteworthy or surprising?
Yeah, well, I what I'm excited about is having these moment in time snapshots, and so this is looking, so we're looking like really like end of first quarter. This came out, and so we've had about a year of the Chat GPT era under our belts, and of a lot of folks at least trying to figure out how and why to use this stuff. And so one of the things that we're seeing is that like the use cases for it are spread out pretty widely, and I think in future reports it'll probably get wider because there were a lot of good write-in responses. But what we're seeing, there's a bit of this dichotomy now in people saying that this can have an impact on just about everyone's job, front office, back office, like whether you're client facing or behind the scenes, data, creative, all these dichotomies. Like generative AI in particular can affect how people do these jobs, and the vast majority are saying it's having a positive impact on their jobs. There was only one person who said it was having a negative impact. More than 100 responses, so that'd be a fun one to interview. But at least and there are a number of folks still on the fence. But overwhelmingly, like this has been beneficial. It can affect everyone, but then when you're looking at the use cases for it, it's still very heavy in terms of like the content side. Right?
Sure.
And so this is what they're actually doing with it. And I'd expect that we'll start seeing that shift over to the data analytics, things like how you're really doing segmentation and personalization and getting into some of these richer applications of it. I think there are also some concerns with doing too much with data and like having, sharing too much with AI, even if it's supposed to be a safer, more enterprise level security. The other piece of it that relates to that in a way is with metrics. I asked about a lot of different kinds of metrics that people might be using. The one answer, and this was like one of the more decisive responses, especially as people could pick multiple responses, is that people were overwhelmingly looking at how AI was saving time. And so that's, it's pretty powerful, but also really unusual, right? Like especially in a professional context, we're not used to judging things based on how well they save time. And that also means it's going to be really hard to make the case for that going forward. Does management really care how much time you're saving if there isn't a more tangible result on the other side of it? And so this is where I think getting into both like the ROI on the more positive side, on the defensive side a bit more in terms of cost savings, like I'm curious if that starts rising to the forefront later on.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, like there's so much to bite off on that. I mean, Greg, do you have any thoughts before I start riffing?
I guess my immediate thought, and this is something Geoff and I have discussed a lot, and I'm actually having a meeting with an agency next week, that's curious about how to make more effective use of AI in their operations and all of their production cycles and things like that. And to me, saving time almost seems like a double-edged sword, especially for the agencies, right? Where so much of agency billing is built around hourlies. Whether it should be or not is obviously a fantastic debate. I don't believe it should be, but nonetheless, for the most part, agencies are still billing on hourlies like a lot of professional services firms. And now you've got this technology that delivers clear benefit in terms of time savings. And that seems to immediately put this sort of like raise the specter of downward price pressure as clients start to recognize that they can get a lot more work in a lot less time. And that puts the agency in, I think, a real bind, doesn't it?
It does. And this is also where, where does quality fit into the equation?
Oh, yeah.
And also, I mean, I was having this discussion with someone that runs one of these agency design content management and workflow suites, and they've got some great products out there. And they're saying like how many more accounts their customers can take on, and I'm like, even if that's the case, right? Like, when do you get diminishing and then detrimental returns from
Yeah.
that. And so I mean, Greg, I think to your point also, where if we're able to save some time and put that back into actual strategy, actual insights, then how can we go and deliver a caliber of work that we couldn't deliver before, right? Like, that's really exciting. If it's just, okay, well, now, so now we can either throw out more hours in this package or lower our overall rates and like that, then yeah, this race to the bottom, I think, should be a huge concern for all of us.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's one of the things I wanted to bring up too was the data side of it, because I mean, obviously we have our own conversations with people, and one of the things that we tend to do is as soon as they start talking about individual productivity, and we obviously have that conversation, but we tend to move it along because it's not kind of the work we want to dive into, if that makes sense. Because I mean, that's where a lot of these content apps actually help out. Where the real work seems to be on the marketing side is with the data fueled ML, and then using that to possibly scale up with generative AI and get into personalization. These are like more the pipe dream implementations and use cases. But what we're really seeing is like an avoidance of that data conversation. And what people aren't talking about, but when you get under the kimono, is the dirty data problem, right? Where there's just so much of a mess underneath most enterprises' walls and how they're maintaining their data. And I feel like there's kind of like this coming to the light moment where folks are going to have to face that. And I'm curious to see what your thoughts on that are, if you're seeing the same things or if we're just kind of in our own little echo chamber.
Yeah, well, there are some trust issues involved. That even if you're supposedly, your data is walled off from everything else, like how I don't understand if you're using some kind of LLM, like how you're not training the model. Yeah, but how big of an issue is that, especially if there's some protection for your customer data or other sensitive info not getting out there. I think that there's also there are a lot of opportunities to get us there. Like, one of my favorite ways to use AI is helping when I'm interviewing others and like essentially doing kind of like market research. And I've had a couple of these projects where I can then focus on the conversation, not be scribbling notes down the whole time, like trying to tally things, and then use AI to say, okay, well, can you help take these two transcripts and see what are all the things they have in common? What are all the things they disagree on? Is it picking up on things that I might have missed? And especially as these get so much smarter that like it's not about just using the same word over and over again, right? Like they could be describing different concepts, and so then it's allowing me to take a lot of this information, ask much tougher questions, and come to richer conclusions based on all this. And now, if you think of like where we all cut our teeth in this age of social media and Web 2.0, where we have these kinds of conversations and like being able to find patterns that even a trained analyst, if they could pick up on it, it could take them just an inordinate amount of time to do so. And so now with publicly shared information out there, like that, you can then be way smarter about like what you're doing with it and getting to that moment of insight way faster. And this is also where I think things are shifting radically with it. AI. When I was working at Sysomos in 2017, first conversation I had with the sales team was stop using the word insights. We're not in the insights business. If we're lucky, we're helping our clients get to insights faster or find insights that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. we did not have an insights product then. And even then, I had some inkling that just like the speed of how technology was moving, like tech would get to the point where it could deliver insights, and now we're at that moment, and it's kind of scary, but pretty wild too to get to experience it.
Pretty cool. Yeah. So, one of the things too that we're seeing with LLMs is like a movement. Eventually, I think it's a maturity thing where people want to go to private instances or get into private trained accounts. Like, for example, Writer, you could do your enterprise account. I mean, obviously you could do that with GPT, although with less functionality than Writer. And so like you have all these, and Jasper, and you have all these different flavors of platforms. And then there are people that are just straight up going into a private instance with either one of the main algorithms or an open source one, depending on their security needs, just to train it on their own data. Can you discuss like what you see as the natural evolution from experimentation into some of these more substantial implementations?
Yeah, well, this is I think like meeting a really big market need right now, and even if you look back at the survey, the when I asked about people's favorite AI powered tech to use, even in a group of pretty AI savvy marketers, OpenAI, and I grouped ChatGPT and DALL-E 3 together, so I didn't quite break those out, but I'm assuming most are more heavily using the ChatGPT side without DALL-E 3, although DALL-E 3 helps kind of put it over the top. And like more than half of respondents said like this was their favorite. But I think like over time, I'd expect there to be first I'd expect some of the other big players like Claude. I mean, what Google's doing with Gemini and like how they evolved from Bard to Gemini. I don't think they're getting nearly enough credit for what a great product that they're building. And like as people catch on, it's like, oh wait, like we could just go and keep just like continue to put like even more eggs in that Google basket and just like call it a day. We don't have to think too hard. Like I think we're quickly getting there. Like that's a viable scenario that in a way that it wasn't 3 or 6 months ago. But also with some of these specialized tools, especially not just for the content you can produce, but for the workflows and like how they protect your information on the back end will become really important. And I think that there's even a need where a number of these like Jasper was the pioneer before there was ChatGPT,
right?
And they kept pivoting and evolving, and it was pretty wild. But then it was like, oh wait, like do we need something specialized? The pendulum shifted to this like catch-all Swiss Army knife approach, and now I think we'll get back into some more of those specialized functions, and that might be more like AI native companies like a Writer, Jasper, winning out in some of their domains. There's some areas like I think creative Adobe's done a tremendous job,
absolutely
and
brilliant.
So,
yeah.
Like there is some of this like rich get richer, and like Adobe on the high end, Canva on the low end, and like in the middle there won't be like the two of them will just sort of meet there. And I don't know the future of something independent like a Midjourney beyond just being acquired by.
That's my favorite tool, David. Thank you for bringing it up.
Right. But I mean, you're raising an interesting point there is, so you've got Geoff's favorite tool, Midjourney, that kind of sits in that middle ground, I guess, name pun intended. It's in the middle of the journey. But, where it is in that middle ground, where it's this very specialized app for image creation, it doesn't have any of the sort of, small business tools. It doesn't have any of the pro creator tools. And what happens in a scenario like that, because there are hundreds, thousands of these tools, many of whom are attracting venture money that effectively don't have a viable market opportunity long term. Are they headed for acquisition?
Yeah, and like I don't see how something like Midjourney doesn't get snapped up, and it, especially just because either they become something with like a better front end that
It's coming. Actually, I'm using the front end now. It's an alpha.
all right. Well, I mean, do you think it's a good competitor to some of the others?
Yeah, it's on par with Firefly and Stable. It's a little bit better than Stable, but not substantially different or better.
Yeah, it's just like there's room for a lot of winners, but only so many, especially at some of these. Like it just like well in double digit valuation. So yeah, I mean, I think that like there has to be this narrowing of the field, plus a lot more modest expectations, right?
Right.
That there could be some really good 7-8 figure exits, and that's not bad for like a few months of work,
Right.
It's kind of like, do you remember with social media when we had that initial 2007, 2008, maybe even in the 2009 burst of startups, and then it consolidated pretty quickly into the big social networks. And I do feel like you're spot on. Like I feel too that the big tech players are the ones that are going to end up eating these guys. I mean, even OpenAI, if they were to, for whatever Sam Altman reason, have some sort of a fall down, I mean, they would get acquired probably by Microsoft. I mean, that's the obvious play there.
Yeah.
And then Amazon has no real generative AI strategy for anything beyond its stores, which is smart to some extent, but you don't really see them with a big LLM. You don't see them with any big image generator. So obviously they're a primary company to look to acquire, right? And they do have that big investment in Claude. And then Gemini, Google, I mean, I could totally see them snapping up Stable or Midjourney. I mean, it's just on and on and on. All these guys are just sitting there kind of waiting to see who kind of stands out, and it turns into what happened with all the marketing automation players, right? I mean, I think even HubSpot's and is the last one standing, and they're about to get bought.
And that big challenge of like the longer the wait, then it just how much the big tech can just do on its own.
Right. I mean, these guys can't innovate either. I mean, that's the thing. They're so big, it's really hard for them to innovate. I think the best strategic move I've seen out of any player so far in AI is what Microsoft did with OpenAI. I mean, basically they've given them enough to create an incredible technology. Microsoft has full access to all of it and can resell it at will. And what happens between OpenAI and Microsoft, who knows? But they've already won this battle. I mean, they're selling so much of that just via Azure, and that whole Microsoft Teams Copilot's really awesome. 365 Copilot's awesome, even awesomer. I mean, brilliant, just so brilliant. Satya is just so smart.
And putting, I mean, the craziest bet I thought they had is that all new PCs having a Copilot button on the keyboard, right? Like right. That is, you can't really go back from that,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like going back from that little, was that lightning cord? That was really painful for Apple. And there's another one, like what's Apple doing? No strategy, right?
Well, and it seems like every day it's almost sounds like, like when you have the trade deadline coming up, right? Like, who are they going to go with? And is it, and are they going to, bring in some star pitcher from Japan, or are they going to go with some hotshot power hitter who's been in the Detroit farm system? But so who are they going to go and like, which contracts are they going to buy out? But so much of it is like, how do they cobble this stuff together and make their own devices more useful? And look, they've got a good track record of that. Where they've had a worse track record is they don't need to come up with their own search engine. That it's being able to license Google, that works fairly well for them. They've had it's a long road for them to kind of go out on their own with their Maps product and build that. So
Right.
And that might even be more analogous to where Apple's go with this. It's even once Apple had its own maps, Google Maps was the default for most people for years. And now, I still like Google Maps, but I know that Apple Maps are a really good product. And if it opens up, you're not cringing that it's going to take you in the wrong direction.
Same thing with what they did with weather too when they bought Dark Skies, which is photographers loved Dark Skies because you could literally get down to 15 minutes, it's going to rain right here, and it was pretty accurate. And Apple just bought it, and I think the weather product's brilliant now. So.
I still miss that app though.
Yeah, that was a good app, wasn't it?
Why don't we take a quick break? We'll hear from a couple of our sponsors, and we'll come back with more with David Berkowitz right after that.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. And we're here today with David Berkowitz, a CMO, a brilliant social media mind, and, of course, the founder of the AI Marketers Guild. Welcome back, David.
Good to be here.
All right. Let's get into it. I think we wanted to talk a little bit about advertising, and then we wanted to talk a little bit about the future of CMOs and the workforce. So what do you think about what's happening with kind of this AI generation space, with how Meta is using it, how Google's using it within AdWords, kind of this development, if you would, within niches where now we're seeing this spread out to people that maybe don't have agencies, to people that are trying to maybe extrapolate into more sales using their own AdWords campaigns or whatever it might be with Meta?
Yeah, well, I think that one of my favorite all-time marketing campaigns is when Staples came out with the easy button, and it's such a great metaphor, and I love that they actually started selling the physical ones you could put at your desk. I don't quite know why one would hit it, but great branding on their part, and for most of the marketing that's out there, right? The vast majority of businesses are small businesses, and for most of what people need, they can't afford an agency, or if they're hiring someone off Upwork or Fiverr or some family friend or something like that, then most don't really know what they're doing. Some it's educated guesses, or it can get you far enough along to get the job done. So having some version of that easy button built in, and not assume that you know better than what the algorithms know, especially if you're trying to adjust things so that you might be trying to achieve different goals. If you're an independent business with a physical presence, sometimes you might want to push people more into your local store, which is very different from when you might want to target anyone who could find you online and make a purchase that way. And just so much of even the kinds of need states are going to be very different for someone who needs to get that product immediately, for instance, versus someone who can wait a few days for it to come to them, let alone geography and all these other factors. That's a lot to take in there. And Google's been going there with its Performance Max approach overall, but I think the more down market that goes, then there's ultimately for Google and Meta especially Amazon's like a slightly just slightly narrow use case, because it's got to be a little bit more specific who's actually selling through there. But for Google and Meta, it's just so much upside, right? Like if this works a little bit better than what it did before, then just so much of that will be reinvested back into advertising, and Google and Meta deal with more small businesses than I guess anyone else on the planet.
Right.
So that's a lot of upside right there if they can make the process a little bit better, and also start convincing more of these businesses that the do it for me approach works. And now we're also at the point where the tools for doing so have gotten so good for not just the copy and the creative, but the targeting, the getting a landing page, all the elements that you need. Like, okay, like I think I'm targeting people 25 to 49 and that are in this specific area, but like I don't really know. Like there could be a lot of boomers out there that I'm missing right now who I didn't realize were in the market for my products. Like, just if you tell me, right? Like that's a big shift in, I guess, how most people have approached marketing.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Go ahead, Greg.
No, absolutely. And I think the ability we have now through something like a Performance Max to sort of not just do programmatic media, but effectively programmatic creative, right? Being able to take, whatever it is, couple dozen assets and dynamically mix match those to optimize performance. So, this headline works with that image, with this body copy, this call to action for this audience is really interesting. It's such a cliche to say whatever it is, right message to the right person at the right time. But we've never really been able to do that. The same way we've never really been able to do one-to-one personalization. And we were finally approaching that point in time when the technology makes it possible. In the same way, before you said, we're approaching that point in time where the technology can actually get us to insight as opposed to just information. It's interesting. It's a pivotal time, I think, for marketers in a lot of ways because of these kinds of things, right?
Yeah, and even now, like I'm waiting for my Rabbit R1 to arrive, right? Like that, the standalone device there that you can just talk to and point the camera at things. And I'm curious how well it works. I actually even have the Humane AI pin that I'm waiting to unbox as well. But with Rabbit, their framing of it as an action engine.
Right.
Is really powerful, and you connect it to Spotify and Uber and TripAdvisor and all of these things, and now you tell it, like, what do you actually want it to do for you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If Rabbit doesn't nail it, someone else will, and I think that's also a big part of the moral right now, right? Like where
absolutely,
if you're using Writer or Gemini or Midjourney or Adobe or whatever it is you're using right now, like if it doesn't do it today, either it will tomorrow or someone else will. And so like having that concept out there, like, oh, actually just like give me a few recommendations and then, yeah, I like this one, just book it for me. I mean, I just went on a week-long trip where I could have used that like 20 different times and it would have actually kept me off my phone a bit more. Like I'd love something like that.
Absolutely. And that's, I don't like to do a whole lot of, back patty kind of stuff, but, I keep pointing to something. I spoke at a conference like right before COVID and talked about this idea. I didn't call them agents, I don't believe, but I effectively talked about this idea that one day every consumer would have an AI that knows that consumer as well as the consumer knows themselves, that can act on their behalf. And make decisions, and that marketers effectively would have to understand how to kind of enter that world, get into the consideration set, or effectively been left out of the consideration set potentially forever, right? Which is kind of I guess dire. And Jeremiah Oyang. I don't know why my tongue is not working well today.
I'm going to call him and say you called him Jeremy.
He spoke in class today, I understand.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, Jeremiah
Pearl
talks
Jam
about...
reference, ladies and gentlemen. New album.
But, Jeremiah obviously has been talking about agents for the past 12 months or so, and now we're seeing it kind of become real, this idea of large action models, of Rabbit, whether you believe in the potential for a standalone device or not right now is a whole nother story, but we've got to be aware of this stuff. To me, that creates a fundamentally different landscape for marketers trying to influence how consumers behave, because now consumers have a whole new way to behave, and they're going to potentially be much more reliant on these large action model based systems taking action for them, making decisions for them, essentially narrowing down consideration sets potentially to a single consideration, and and taking that action for them with little to no human intervention potentially, right? How does a marketer kind of make sense of that world, and what impact is that going to have on the way we need to build brands and drive action and get engagement and create demand and all that kind of stuff? What do you think?
Well, I think right now there's a lot of. I mean, it's even one of these like latest existential crises for CMOs, and I mean the press, especially the kind of press that we read, they love nothing more than someone saying like some major company eliminating the CMO role.
Right.
That you don't see that kind of gloating and like gleefulness about it. If if a COO or a CTO role or that doesn't happen. There's almost like this Schadenfreude, let's go and stick it to the marketers.
Do you feel like that's because so much of that function is now getting rolled up under the chief commercial or chief revenue officer, which is basically a nice way of saying the chief sales guy? Do you feel like that's like just kind of that nature of that relationship with sales and marketing kind of bumping heads all the time?
I mean, this is where I feel like a CMO right now has to be able to go and use a lot of these technologies to their advantage right now and say like, okay, well, now that we can see way more of what's going on inside and outside of our organization, and now that our team that is so well equipped to handle strategy and communications and data science and all these different disciplines that are the lifeblood and like that separate human from machine going forward. We've got this under the marketing org. Then it's like, you sure as hell don't want some like supposed chief AI officer coming in and now going and take on that turf. You sure don't want this to just be like some CTOs or CIOs RFP process, and then marketing gets shut out of that picture because you can't have it use the processes that you really need, right? That are mission critical for you. And that to the extent that you won't even be able to hire people if you don't have access to some of these technologies, because they'll go somewhere else that does, right? So this is, I think, going to prove to be yet another make or break moment, just like the rise of digital and that, push and pull between, like the CMO won out over the chief digital officer, right? Like that
right.
Battle's basically been, that's more or less settled now, but it's like, there's still and Geoff, precisely that, where it's, someone who is as close as possible to the P&L, right? And especially the P side of the P&L, let's just give them more authority. I think now,
which is short-sighted, right? Because the sales guys never advocate for. Well, some do. That's not true. But customer journey tends to get swept under the rug a little bit for the sake of, hey man, we just need to get more in the door, and that could be mistaken.
And we still are wired for that same version of last click attribution.
So outdated. I mean, I think if there's one benefit we can get from AI it's if we clean up our data, we can look and see that whole journey a little bit better and understand how mid journey, like mid funnel content really matters, how those touches where people aren't talking to the brand yet, or they are talking but are also exploring outside of you to see whether or not you have a real valuable offering, if they're checking customer reviews, for example, on and on and on. All those different touches matter so much, and yet they get cut.
Right.
Well, but even that, it's more of a metaphor, right? Like whoever has the ball last gets the credit. It's like saying it's just the wide receiver, that.
Damn the tight end.
Just get more wide receivers, right? Like who cares about the offensive line? Like, do you even need a quarterback, right? Like the wide receiver is so good at catching balls and running with it, right? Like doesn't even matter who throws it to them, right?
Tebow makes a comeback.
And I'm really the worst equipped person to make sports metaphors. And
no, you are not.
No, but it makes sense, right? Like
try.
you're cutting all that front end kind of relationship development, and you see it sometimes on the backside after the sale, right, where customer churn happens a ton, and there's not that kind of customer advocate after the sale. And I think almost everybody knows that most new sales actually occur from your existing customers, not your new customers. It's just there's just a penny wise, pound foolish approach to this cutting that I'm seeing right now. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah. So I mean, I hope that turns into more opportunity for those marketers who, like, if anything, should be well equipped to be able to make a case for things, right? Like so. But I think the idea now that unfortunately it's coming from a position of need rather than just want. It's tough, especially when people seem to be rooting against the whole marketing function.
Yeah. So in light of all of that, in light of everything that's happening with artificial intelligence, in light of everything that's happening even in the world perhaps, but let's keep it focused on kind of this sort of shifting landscape of marketing, this exponential change happening at the hands of AI. What if you had to give a senior marketer, CMO, or any kind of senior marketer, one piece of advice, the one thing you would suggest they do right now, what would that be?
Use all of this, right? Like just go and what we've never seen before is just the opportunity to go and try things and create things and see the output of things, especially when no one else has to know, right? Like, you can use some dummy Google account. You can use fake data. You don't have to share stuff, right? This was a tough thing. Is like we saw the good old halcyon rise of Twitter, right? But to really get Twitter, you needed to tweet, and you need to follow all these other folks. You need to interact with them, and otherwise it was just like another news source. Yeah. Now. But like you don't have to do all of that, right? It's so this kind of stuff that you can do just from the privacy of your own home office here is like try as much as possible and keep just pushing things further. Just like be stupid with some of this stuff, right? Like I just and if you start using AI to like come up with a better grocery list or something that's not that consequential, it can just get those juices flowing. And so as even on this call, it's like, if there's some CMOs listening, then writing down a few of these things that you haven't heard of before, or that you've heard of but you haven't gotten around to, and maybe you've used a lot of this stuff, but you didn't even see the incredible demo that Rabbit's founder did. Okay, like just 20 minutes of terrific showmanship. That also helps get you thinking about where a lot of this AI stuff is going, even if you never use this thing, right? So like you just have access to this stuff. It doesn't take long. The pro versions of most of this stuff cost like $20 a month. So that might not be the enterprise version that you wind up subscribing to for your org. That lets you do way more for that like kind of like cup of coffee type budget. But we've just never had access to stuff like this before. And it's incredible, like because it is a visceral reaction once you start diving in.
Oh, no doubt. It's really cool, isn't it? Yeah. What's your favorite? We're kind of running out of time, so let's talk about like what is your favorite AI moment that's happened to you, like where you've used it and you're like, wow, that like really turned me like 180 and changed my perspective of this particular matter, whether it's personal or business.
I mean, there've been a few along the way. I'd say like one of those real mind blowing moments was using HeyGen and this is like the digital twin. Create a clone of yourself, and even where when I started using things like that or 11 Labs, focused on voice cloning. What immediately hit me was if my mom saw this or heard this, right, would she be fooled? Right? And my mom totally with it. She's very bright, right? This is not a knock on my mother, especially during Mother's Day month right here. It's just like I don't see how she wouldn't be. And if she saw something that was like a little glitchy or my voice was a little off or something, like she'd just think her phone was a little slow, or she was on a bad internet connection. And of course, if my own mother is fooled by this, then like who wouldn't be, right? And the fact that this could be done with, when I was first using HeyGen, and I don't think this stuff's only getting better. You take a 30-second snippet of video or audio to go and train this, right? Like stuff that a good chunk of us, I don't know if the majority, but like hundreds of millions of us have snippets like that out there publicly on the internet right now. So really powerful, scary as hell too. And so I'm just like trying to have more upbeat conversations like this in terms of what some of the opportunity is. But in a critical election year in the U.S. and with so much going on like just that like macro sense, then we're in for a lot more scares too, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Geoff is actually just a HeyGen digital twin right now. That's the scary part.
When I was at USPS, there was this dude that actually had like a fake avatar on his video, and like he would show up to meetings and just literally be, like bobbing, and nobody would figure out that he wasn't there.
Had his eyeballs painted on his.
He just did like a 5-minute loop. It was really funny.
Well, it reminds me of the time my AP chemistry teacher in high school, she ducked behind the lab desk for a couple minutes to see if any of the students knew she was missing.
So funny.
A sad experiment.
Well, I think we could go on forever, but we are out of time. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my good colleague, Greg, to say goodbye, Mr. Berkowitz. It's been great to see you, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Good seeing you. Thank you for joining us. Where can folks find you if they want to learn more about AIMG or to connect with you or any of that good stuff?
AIMarketersGuild.com. I'm D. Berkowitz on LinkedIn and most social platforms that I still choose to participate in these days. And so, happy to connect with any of your esteemed audience.
There you go.
Awesome. And we would definitely encourage anybody who is a marketer serious about AI, do check out AI Marketers Guild. It's an awesome organization, lots of great educational content all the time, lots of good people.
Good events.
And, absolutely. So with that, thank you everybody for joining us. Again, as Geoff said at the early part of the show, please be sure to like, to link, to share, to love, to comment, to complain. Visit us at nobrainerpodcast.com. You can email us directly if you have any suggestions, any questions, or anything you would like us to cover for future episodes. Be sure to check out the show notes there as well for this episode, where we will share all of David's links, including a link to the study that we were talking about earlier in this episode. And with that, everybody have a great couple of weeks. We will be back next time with some more interesting content. Thank you, David. Thank you, Geoff. Thank you, everybody. Peace out.
Over and out. Thank you all.